We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about the recent news story and also the chatter in the watch communities about $2.4 million worth of Rolex watches and whether or not those watches were actually stolen. And this is not going to be any type of political video. Where I'm going to go with this video is going to be going in the direction of how jewelry stores, authorized dealers, and most, if not all, watch dealers protect their merchandise any time of the year at all, and how it's actually extremely difficult to steal watches and what can even be done with them. I'm going to be giving you all of the inside scoop on this, but first I'd like to show you on my wrist I have a vintage JLC solid gold watch. We just got this in at delraywatch.com, where you can see this watch and many others, including a whole section of new watches from brands like Omega, Zenith, Parmigiani Fleurier, and we're offering much steeper discounts than any of the authorized dealers can because we're getting them from authorized dealers. You can check out more in the link in the description below or just going to delraywatch.com. So let's talk about this story. There's news stories floating around on the internet in different places and on the news where it shows that a Rolex store was broken into in New York City, and also that $2.4 million worth of Rolex watches were stolen. Now, the store in question actually turns out to be not a Rolex boutique, but in fact a Rolex store inside of a Watches of Switzerland store in New York City in the Soho area. And Brian Duffy, the CEO of Watches of Switzerland, based out of the UK, as well as Mayors, which Watches of Switzerland did purchase about a year and a half ago, he came out and he made a statement, and he did say specifically point blank that one, they're not a boutique. For some reason, these authorized dealers, they really like to make that distinction. I guess it gives them a little bit more leeway and also kind of shows you they have other watches as well. But he made that important clarification, as well as made sure to tell people that no watches were actually stolen. Now, there will be a clip right here where it does show people taking watches, or really the watch boxes. Now, when we talk about this, it's extremely important to know how jewelers and how authorized dealers and boutiques ship, keep, store, and protect their inventory. So when you see these boxes coming out the door, or any other clips on the internet of boxes, Rolex boxes coming out the door, here's the thing, guys. Rolex box is worth on the street $100, $200, sometimes a little more depending on what it is, but these boxes just lay around. They're not protected. They're not protected inside safes, vaults, or anything like that. In fact, when watches are shipped to jewelry stores, everything is completely sterile. And in fact, I have an example right here of a Rolex ship case. They come in these styrofoam and plastic, highly protective, highly secure, kind of nondescript cases, and the watch just kind of sits right in there. You can see that there is, when you open and close it, there's a little bit of an indent for the type of watch to fit, and these are sometimes specific depending on the size of the watch, but they go inside these cases and they come stacked inside of a couple different boxes, and the Rolex boxes are shipped separately. So if there's someone prying into a UPS or a FedEx or a DHL box, they don't see the Rolex logo, they don't see that coronet, and then decide to get away with it. Though when they do open the one with just the boxes, they see the insurance is going to be a little bit lower if it's an inside job. And, you know, if they take a Rolex box, it's not the worst thing in the world, because what's really important is the warranty card as well as the watch, because that is specific for the watch, for the warranty card, and the watch is, of course, a valuable item with a specific serial number. Now, when we talk about authorized dealers and boutiques, when a store is closed, it's extremely difficult to break in and steal a watch, if not impossible for the average person. You'd have to be a career criminal. You'd have to be someone that specializes in heists. You'd have to be, what is it, the movie like the Thomas Crown Affair or something like that. You'd have to be a sleuth, an expert at this to get away with it. It's really difficult. One, there's alarms. So in this situation, obviously the alarm, while it may have gone off, you know, there may not be a response. But in an isolated incident, there's an alarm. It's very loud. It hurts your ears. If you have earplugs or you're willing to put up with it, you can continue. But then when you finally find The safe, it may be enclosed in an entire room. They have specialist companies that build these strongly enforced bunker-esque rooms that are difficult to break into. You need to quite literally be driving a bulldozer or have a drill or a sledgehammer, and you need to get at it. So you have the alarm going off. Eventually, there's going to be a response from law enforcement, and then you have to get through that. And now once you get through that, there's very likely a safe or a vault inside of that specifically for jewels, cash, and watches. And these vaults, or really what you'd consider to be a safe in any other circumstance, they're very difficult to get in. There's different ratings, but typically no less than 30 minutes of drilling would be required to get in. So not only do you have to go through all those things or somehow find a way to disable the alarm system and go through all these things. And by the way, alarm systems are double and sometimes triple fault tolerant. So there's cell service, right? You need a cell jammer. It's just not realistic. It gets into a movie at that point. So once you get past all of those things, you're trying to get in the vault, you need to have a high-powered drill that can go through that dense, strong, hard material to actually get in. And then you have to drill out the safe for 30 minutes. And then you have to know how to put in special tools and pull things out and the different locks and mechanisms. And you have to do all that. And of course, all the vaults and safes are very fault tolerant with their alarm systems that are specific to the vaults and the safes. So you have to get through all of that. And then once you get in there for a Rolex store, there's going to be a bunch of tiny little ladies Rolex Cellinis. So you go through all of that. You pull off this crazy heist like some type of professional. And then you get in there, and there's a bunch of tiny little lady Cellinis and some Oyster Perpetuals, maybe the oddball two-tone Sky Dweller, and you did all that only to get the watch that is you can really only unload on the market, I guess in a black market situation, to someone that might be called a fence, for a few cents on the dollar, if at all, because the serial number is going to be wrecked from there on out. All of these dealers, all the authorized dealers, the boutiques, even pre-owned dealers, keep all of this stuff documented very well up in the cloud and offsite systems, so all the serial numbers are dead forever. That watch is basically useless. Now, with diamonds, they can do something a little bit different. They can do some cutting and stuff. You can take them to parts of the world where people will do anything for $1, and I'm exaggerating, but there are people that are willing to break the law, which is horrible. These things are not easy to pull off. And so, once again, even if you can get away with the watches, you go through all those steps, but the watches are nearly useless. You could wear it, but eventually it's going to break. And when the serial number gets looked up, that watch was in a very bad scenario, and that person is screwed. They're going to follow it back, and they're going to get you. Now, I'll also mention that in modern technology, they have these specialized air systems. I don't know if that particular Watches of Switzerland had this installed. I didn't read anything about this, but they're becoming increasingly common where when an alarm goes off for a certain period of time and there's no response back, or certain tripwires are caught off, or certain cameras and motion detectors, there are these systems that will either disperse thick smoke or other types of deterrent or things that will cause the respiratory system to start having problems as a human, and you just can't continue. And so this is something that I've seen from peers out there in the industry of people installing these systems. They've come out here, they've gone other places, and people have really gotten these systems because in today's time, there's also these jewelry heist gangs that come in from, actually they caught them coming from Peru, but even in Florida, there was a jewelry heist gang, and they were going around, and they were professionals, and they knew all the tips and tricks and steps, and they eventually got caught anyway. But when you're faced with something like that smoke or that gas or that deterrent in the store, unless you have the gas mask and all the equipment and then you can see through the smoke, it becomes so difficult. And so, yeah, maybe in the 1920s when they were robbing trains like the cowboys, okay, you could get away with it. Maybe even to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But nowadays, these things are so strict, so controlled. Every process, procedure, and check is in place. It's pretty unbelievable. And so when we talk about the watches like that disappearing, guys, it would have to be quite literally a miracle or someone that was on the inside pulling that off. Now, I'll also share that it's not exclusive to just people that have the best security and the best resources, the best financial resources to pull that off. These things are also very cost effective for small businesses. The pricing on a lot of these solutions is kind of based on the square footage of your store, as well as, you know, how much in terms of assets that you have on hand, the watches on hand. So even local mom and pop stores, they have these things. It's just something that the industry has pretty much well solidified. If you don't have these things, you're really messing up and you're really just being a little bit ignorant, because theft does happen. And while everyone has insurance, going through that insurance, you know, that whole insurance claim is obviously a big hassle. And so these little things that aren't that expensive can really help jewelry stores and prevent $2.4 million plus in watches being stolen in any circumstance, in any occasion throughout the entire year. Because not only is looting something that could happen, there are professional heists, people out there, professional criminals that do go after stores, but it's becoming so rare today because of all of these options. So what do you guys think? Is any of this kind of interesting? I know when I first started seeing that these things are shipped in these boxes and the way everything is handled, it's really come a long way. People kind of just think, oh, the Rolex boxes all show up, they put them out, they stay in the showcase. Everything's totally inventoried, full RFID tracking in most cases too for the big name brands. It's really tough, guys. What do you think? I would love to hear it in the comments below. And please do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.